Hello, Drake Hawkins, Musically Optimistic here, and today I'm going to be reviewing this new Travis Scott album, UTOPIA. So Travis Scott is this super indie underground artist. Might not have heard of him, because that's what I usually review on this channel. I usually review smaller underground artists to help give them more exposure and help give them some feedback, or just generally give my own opinions on things, because the market for people reviewing bigger musicians, that's kind of filled. There are so many people doing that. There's so many people trying to make their own lane in that. So I usually talk about smaller artists. However, today, because I need to make a video, and generally just because I want to give my thoughts on it, I'm going to be talking about the new Travis Scott record, his first album since 2018's Astroworld, which was a more commercial departure from his 2015 album Rodeo, which is one of the most innovative, groundbreaking, and boundary-pushing records in all of trap, pushing into this more artful, psychedelic place. And then you had Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight, which I still haven't listened to. And then after that, you have 2018's Astroworld, which, like I said, is a more commercial album, having a lot more trendier features like Gunna and Nav, and having a lot more straightforward, just straight trap songwriting. It was received well at the time, and people still think it holds up pretty well to this day. At least most people do. And while it wasn't Travis's best album, it still got a lot more eyes on him, and a lot more fans coming into that album that didn't know who he was before, didn't listen to anything before, and to this day probably still haven't listened to anything before Astroworld. And then fast forward, you have the Astroworld disasters, which take your pick on whose side you're on. I don't give a shit. Sorry, I don't have time to empathize with someone who has more money than I can even imagine. After that whole debacle, people were wondering, will Travis Scott release his album anytime soon? Because at this point, it'd been like 4 years since he dropped, and he'd been teasing singles like every here and there, doing features here and there, and for the most part, they were pretty weak features and mediocre singles at best. I liked Escape Plan quite a bit. Mafia was a pretty interesting idea, but for the most part, everything else he did was at best and downright awful and boring at worst. And so, going into this album, I was very hesitant because I knew that, like, I enjoyed almost nothing that he's dropped in, like, the past few years. So, yeah, I went into this album pretty skeptical, but glad to say it's his best album. Now, obviously, I just listened to this for the first time, and so this will not be a final opinion, a final reflection of my opinion. So don't take this as a final reflection of my opinion, although who gives a shit about my opinion? But from the intro track, Hyena, on this thing, you get one of the weirdest, most experimental, out there tracks that Travis has ever done. Starts off with this weird, disembodied voice chant thing, and then these booming drums and this fat bass comes in, and it just blew all my worries out of the window, especially as Travis started rapping, because one of my biggest worries going into this record was because of his features and other stuff just lacked any personality or charisma whatsoever. It sounded like he did not give a shit. However, once he opened his fucking mouth on this record, I knew that he was saving all of his energy for this. Thank God continues this experimental edge, having one of the wonkiest beats I've ever heard, and the way he pulls it off is just fantastic. Tizo Touchdown gives some of his best vocals ever on Modern Jam. Even if the track does get a little stale by the end of it, like the instrumental of it starts off skeletal and builds as it goes throughout, but by about the halfway point of the song, that's about where the instrumental's staying. It's not getting any more built out. And so, like, by the end, it's just like, okay, we've heard what we're getting with the song, please end. And that's also one of my biggest problems with the record as a whole, is I feel like the whole thing is a bit lengthy. Like, this thing is an hour and 13 minutes long. It's a full-length film almost. It also feels like that with the massive budget production and features. However, I don't know what I would cut from the track list. Like the next track, My Eyes, who I believe features Sampha. The features aren't on Spotify right now, has one of the most mellow instrumentals that Travis has ever gone over, and then when it switches over after Sampha's part, it's just so gorgeous, mind-bending. God's Country is a pretty straightforward, dark, menacing banger a la Wasted off of Rodeo. And whereas I feel like that track is a little disjointed in its structure, this one is just so laser focused and so cold, and I love this instrumental so much. Sirens is a track that I was a little bit skeptical of at first with its choir vocals and then its weird, like, guitar triplet flow thing. However, it's such a catchy ass song, and the switch up at about 2:20 is one of the most mind-bending, fantastic things I've ever heard done with a sample, just ever. That transition of it chopping it up repeatedly and getting faster and faster and faster until it just goes out into these gorgeous Mike Dean synths. Meltdown, which has a Drake feature, was one that I was skeptical of the second I realized Drake was on it. Because if you don't know, Drake has had one of his worst album just streaks like ever in all of music. However, it seems like Travis is able to bring the best out of anybody as he provides one of his coldest verses ever here. Now, do I think it's a smart idea for him to be throwing shots at apparently Pusha T, considering Pusha T fucking destroyed him and pushed a child into his life? No, not smart at all, but Drake sounds the coldest he's sounded in years, so I'll take it. The following track, Fane, is easily the best Rage song that I've heard, and that's mainly because it does the one thing that I wish many Rage artists would do, that is match the energy of the fucking beat. Artists like Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely, their instrumentals energy will be up here. They'll be like in hell. I love the synths on this track, and then Travis just helps keep that energy up throughout his verse, and with Playboi Carti giving that fiend ad-lib throughout the track, it's pretty cool. Even if Homicide Gang completely derails the track near the end by trying to find a coherent flow, as I don't think they're able to do, it's still easily one of the best Rage songs, even if it's not the best song here. Sorry, I gotta check that we're still recording. Hey, want to stop the video for a second and say, please subscribe. We are so close to hitting 100 subscribers. It'd be so cool if we could do that, because that's a big number. So hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell, send this video to 3 friends. Hell, show this video to your mom. I don't care what you... Hey mom, check out this video. Oh yeah, I forgot. My mother abandoned me. I don't care what you do, just continue watching. I could use that viewership. Del Resto, in parentheses, Echoes, is a track that features Beyonce, of all people. And I don't think it's like one of the best tracks on the album or anything, but it is a nice addition. Track 10, I know, is a pretty straightforward melodic trap song, and honestly, I like this break here, because pretty much all of the track list up to this point has been very lush, dense, multi-layered stuff. So getting this nice little break from all that with a pretty straightforward, bare bones instrumental track is really nice. And it also helps that this is one of the catchiest songs on the record. UTOPIA Twins featuring Rob 49 and 21 Savage is an okay cut, even if I didn't know who the fuck Rob 49 was. Like, I know he was on this year's XXL freshman list or whatever, but I just assumed it was Youngboy until I looked it up and saw that it wasn't. Circus Maximus is like if you take Kanye West's Black Skinhead and add so many layers of just gorgeous synths, throw The Weeknd on there, and then who else does the track feature again? Oh yeah, and Sway Lee. This is probably my favorite song of the album. I'm willing to bet that this could be the hit from the record, as is the most straightforward. Weeknd's performance is fantastic. Everyone does a great job on this song. Mike Dean's production is absolutely mind-blowing, and honestly, I think that this is like a perfect song from top to bottom, but I don't even know what to say about it. After this, we have Parasail, which is a pretty decent interlude. Like, it's nothing mind-blowing. You're not gonna listen to it outside the context of the record, but it is a nice calm down from like 12 tracks of just absolute beggars. After this, we have Schizo with Young Thug, which, again, another hard-ass fucking song. Young Thug and Travis Scott have, like, no flaws on their record, aside from, like, Franchise. Lost Forever has probably the most unexpected feature with West Side Gun on here, and he provides a pretty solid verse. Like, I know Travis likes to pay homage to different types of popular music in the modern era, but Griselda being part of this was something I didn't expect in the slightest. Hell, I didn't even know Travis Scott knew who West Side Gun was. And the fact that these two artists who make like polar opposites in music can get on one track together and it sound this coherent and reasonable, it's perplexing. Track 16, Love, really solid, really catchy song here. It's just funny that this and K-pop are back to back to each other, because they're essentially kind of the same kind of song. Like, they're both kind of these psychedelic takes on reggaeton. However, Love is so much better than K-pop, although K-pop isn't as horrible as a lot of people are saying. Like, K-pop's just a pretty boring track. It's not really horrendous, but Telekinesis with Future and SZA, gorgeous track. The production on this is fantastic. All vocalists just do their best, and SZA on the outro. And then essentially the same could be said with a solo track that closes off the record till further notice. This thing is phenomenal. Like, the production of this record is such a step up from everything, rodeo included. This thing takes rodeo, in my opinion, and goes like 10 miles with it. There are some flaws with the record, like I said. It's like it's almost an hour and a half, like a feature-length film. Although I don't know what I would cut aside from K-pop and like maybe Parasail. This thing is pretty much all killer, no filler, and has some of Travis's best performances on any track on any album, period. If you're a fan of Rodeo, you're going to love this. If you're a fan of Astroworld, it may take some time to get accustomed to something that isn't just the mainstream fodder, but I still think this is something that you may enjoy. Although anything I say is not going to make you check out this vastly popular record that so many people have already uploaded videos on, I bet. So yeah, I'm feeling like a 9- to a 9 on this. It is so good, great. I'm going to listen to it again. That's all I have to say. Bye.